If you've ever felt like you're living two lives, if you've ever wondered what would happen if your deepest secret was discovered, stay with me. Because what happened in my family that evening changed everything, and perhaps, just perhaps, my story might resonate with something in your own life. For more than 20 years, I've lived with a secret so profound, so carefully guarded, that it became like breathing, like a second heartbeat I learned to synchronize with my everyday existence. Cross-dressing wasn't just a hobby for me. It wasn't a passing curiosity or an occasional experiment. It was sacred. My name is Lorenzo, and I'm about to share with you the most vulnerable, terrifying, and ultimately liberating moment of my entire life. This is a story about secrets, identity, family, and the unexpected grace that can emerge when everything you've carefully hidden for decades comes crashing into the light. Let me take you back to the beginning, or at least to the beginning of when this secret became the architecture of my daily existence. My wife Amelia, beautiful, brilliant, ambitious Amelia, had always been a force of nature. From the moment we met in our early 20s, she radiated this incredible energy, this drive that was both inspiring and, if I'm being honest, a little intimidating. She had dreams, big dreams, and she pursued them with a single-minded focus that I admired deeply. When we got married, when we brought our son Robert into the world, I thought that perhaps her intensity would soften, that motherhood and marriage would shift her priorities. But if anything, Amelia doubled down. Her career in corporate finance demanded everything from her, and she gave it willingly. The promotions came, one after another. The salary increased. The responsibilities multiplied. And with each step up the ladder, she was home less and less. Weekday mornings became a blur of hurried kisses and coffee grabbed on the way out the door. Evenings stretched longer and longer. 7 o'clock became 8. 8 became 9, and soon enough, there were nights when she wouldn't come home until after 10, sometimes even later, her face drawn with exhaustion, her mind still clearly running through spreadsheets and presentations, even as she mechanically ate whatever dinner I'd kept warm for her. And Robert, our son, our beautiful boy, he was growing up in this environment too. When he was young, he needed constant attention. I was there for every scraped knee, every homework assignment, every bedtime story. It was a role I embraced, loved even. But it was also a role that left me craving something, some outlet for the part of myself I'd kept locked away since before I even understood what it meant. Cross-dressing had always been there, lurking in the background of my consciousness since I was a teenager. Those early confused feelings of wanting to understand femininity, not just from the outside, but from the inside, of wanting to inhabit that space, to feel the flow of fabric against skin, to see myself transformed in a mirror and recognize something true, something real, something that felt more like me than the face I showed the world every day. But life, responsibilities, expectations, they all pushed that part of me deeper and deeper until it became a whisper I could almost ignore. Almost. The first time I cross-dressed after Robert was born, he was maybe 3 years old. Amelia was at a conference, gone for the entire weekend. I had arranged for Robert to have a play date that stretched into an overnight at his friend's house. That first transformation was clumsy, uncertain, almost laughably amateur. I didn't know what I was doing. The makeup was too heavy, the wig sat wrong on my head, the dress didn't fit quite right. But when I looked in the mirror, when I saw her looking back at me, this version of myself that felt more authentic than anything I'd felt in years. From that moment on, I was hooked. But more than that, I was committed to making this work, to carving out space for this part of myself without destroying the life I'd built. And then came the day that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way except for what it would become. Amelia had texted me that morning about a major presentation she was giving, one that would likely run late, with a client dinner afterwards. She expected to be home around 10, maybe later. Robert was supposed to be at college, 2 hours away, buried in midterms and projects. I had confirmed this just the day before when we'd talked on the phone, his voice distracted and stressed about exams and papers. I came home from work around 4:30, my usual time. The house was empty, gloriously empty, with that particular quality of silence that promised hours of uninterrupted privacy. I made myself a light dinner, checked the tracking app one more time, confirmed Amelia was still downtown at her office. I texted Robert something casual, asked him how studying was going. He responded quickly with a stressed emoji and a comment about too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Perfect. Everything was perfect. I went upstairs to our bedroom and began the ritual. First, a shower, long and hot, washing away Lorenzo, preparing the canvas. Then I moved to the locked closet, retrieving my cases, opening them like treasure chests, deciding what I wanted to be tonight. I chose something spectacular, something I'd been saving for a moment when I had plenty of time, when I didn't have to rush. The gown was a masterpiece, a floor-length, sleeveless sequin evening dress. The dress was extraordinary. Deep black at the bodice, it transitioned through charcoal and champagne tones, finishing in soft silver near the hem, an ombre effect that caught light like starlight on water. The fabric clung to my body, form-fitting through the torso and hips in a way that required the right undergarments, the right shaping, to create the feminine silhouette. I had those undergarments, of course, carefully selected shapewear that smoothed and curved and transformed the male form into something approaching the feminine ideal. The gown flowed to the floor in a sleek column silhouette that spoke of old Hollywood glamour, of red carpets and elegance. But the detail that made this dress truly special was the decorative black beaded shoulder chains, designed to drape elegantly over one shoulder, adding a dramatic, couture-inspired element that elevated the entire look. The neckline was softly scooped, elegant and understated, allowing the shoulder chains to be the focal point. I laid everything out on the bed with the care of a surgeon preparing instruments. I started with the foundation, blending it carefully to create that flawless base. Then came the contouring, years of practice guiding my hands as I sculpted cheekbones, softened my jawline, created the illusion of a more feminine bone structure. The eyes were where I really took my time. I wanted drama, wanted impact, wanted those eyes to be unforgettable. I started with a vivid blue eyeshadow, a shade that was bold without being garish, applied in layers to create depth and dimension. I blended carefully, making sure there were no harsh lines, only smooth gradients of color. Then came the eyeliner, defined and precise, false lashes, long and dramatic. The rest of the face came together quickly. Soft contour along the nose, highlighting on the cheekbones and brow bone and Cupid's bow, bringing forward the features I wanted to emphasize. Then came the wig, settled carefully onto my head, adjusted until it sat naturally, the long blonde waves cascading over my shoulders in a way that felt both glamorous and real. I styled it slightly with my fingers, creating a bit more volume, making sure the curls fell just right. And then, the dress. I stepped into it carefully, feeling the cool slide of sequins and fabric against my skin as I pulled it up over my hips, over my torso. The fit was perfect, hugging my shaped body in all the right places, the shapewear doing its job to create those feminine curves. I fastened the choker around my neck, adjusted it so it sat perfectly, slipped on the heels, simple black pumps with a modest heel that added height without being unwalkable. And then, finally, I turned to the full-length mirror in our bedroom. The woman looking back at me was stunning. She was elegant, sophisticated, glamorous in a way that felt both dramatic and authentic. Every proportion was right, every detail was perfect. This wasn't a man in a dress. This was transformation. This was truth. I stood there for a long moment, just looking, just feeling the incredible rightness of it all. This was who I was. This was the part of me that felt real and authentic and true. In this moment, in this gown, with this face looking back at me, I felt more like myself than I ever did in the suits and ties of my daily life. I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. I was so lost in the moment, so absorbed in my own reflection, that I didn't register any warning signs at all. And then I heard it. A sharp intake of breath behind me. A sound of shock, of disbelief, of something breaking. I spun around, my heart lurching into my throat, and there, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, frozen in complete shock, was Robert. My son. My 20-year-old son, who was supposed to be at college, who was supposed to be 2 hours away, buried in midterms. My son, who had never, not in his entire life, seen this part of me. For one eternal, horrible second, we just stared at each other. I saw every emotion flash across his face in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, shock, something that might have been horror or might have been just complete inability to process what he was seeing. This was his father. His father, standing in their family home, dressed in a floor-length sequined evening gown, wearing dramatic makeup, a blonde wig, heels, jewelry. His father, who had taught him to throw a baseball, who had helped him with math homework, who had attended every soccer game and school play and parent-teacher conference. His father transformed into someone, something he couldn't comprehend. I tried to speak. I opened my mouth, tried to form words, tried to say something, anything, that might explain, might soften, might help. But what could I say? What words existed that could bridge the chasm that had just opened between us? Robert didn't give me the chance. Without a single word, without a question, without any reaction beyond that frozen shock on his face, he turned around. He walked out of the room. I heard his footsteps quick and hard, going down the hallway, down the stairs. I heard the front door open. I heard it close, not slammed, just closed with a controlled precision that was somehow worse than if he'd slammed it. And then silence. I stood there in my beautiful gown, in my perfect makeup, in the transformation that had felt so right just moments before, and I felt my entire world collapse. My legs went weak. I had to sit down on the edge of the bed, and as I did, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The same woman was still there, still beautiful, still perfectly put together, but now she looked like a lie, like a betrayal, like the weapon that had just destroyed my relationship with my son. The thoughts came in a cascade, 1,000 questions and fears and terrors all at once. What was he thinking right now? Where had he gone? What was he going to do? Was he calling his mother? Was he calling friends? Was he somewhere trying to process what he'd just seen? Trying to reconcile the father he'd known his entire life with the image that had just been burned into his brain? And the guilt, oh God, the guilt. I had done this. I had been so careful for so many years, had been so meticulous, so paranoid. And in one moment of letting my guard down, of trusting the routine too much, I had exposed him to something he was never meant to see. I had traumatized my own son. I had forced him to confront something he had no context for, no preparation for, no ability to understand. I thought about taking it all off, removing the makeup, the wig, the dress, transforming back into Lorenzo, into the father he knew. But what would be the point? He'd already seen. The damage was done. The secret was out. Changing clothes wouldn't change what had just happened. Time became strange. I don't know how long I sat there. My phone was downstairs. I had no way of checking it, no way of seeing if Robert was trying to contact me, no way of knowing what was happening in the outside world. The sun moved across the sky. The light in the bedroom changed from afternoon gold to evening gray. And still I sat, frozen, my mind running in circles, unable to settle on any productive course of action. At some point, I heard the garage door open. Amelia was home. I glanced at the clock on the bedside table. 8 o'clock. She was home earlier than expected, but then again, I'd lost all track of time. Maybe she'd finished early. Maybe the dinner had been canceled. Maybe Robert had called her and she'd rushed home. That last thought made my stomach drop even further. I heard her come in through the kitchen, heard her set down her bag and keys the way she always did. Heard her footsteps, heard her voice calling out to me. "Lorenzo, are you home? Your car's in the garage." I couldn't answer. I couldn't make my voice work. I was still in full makeup, still in the gown, still frozen in the disaster of what had happened. Part of me thought that maybe if I stayed perfectly quiet, stayed perfectly still, this would all somehow not be real, would all somehow go away. But then I heard other sounds. The front door opening again. Robert's voice, low and tense, talking to his mother. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone, serious and strained. I forced myself to stand up, forced myself to walk to the bedroom door, to open it slightly, to listen. Robert's voice drifted up the stairs, clearer now. There was a pause. I imagined Amelia's face, the confusion there, the sudden alertness that came when something was clearly wrong. She would be taking off her coat, setting down her work bag, turning her full attention to our son, probably already cataloging all the possible emergencies that could bring him home unexpectedly from college. Another pause. I could feel the weight of what was coming, could feel Robert gathering his courage, trying to figure out how to say the impossible thing he needed to say. "Mom, I came home because I forgot my laptop charger when I was here last weekend." His voice trailed off. I could picture him struggling with the words, with how to describe what he'd seen, how to make sense of it enough to communicate it to someone else. "I found Dad, in your bedroom, dressed in..." Mom, he was wearing a dress, a gown, makeup, a wig. Full, I don't even know how to describe it. He dresses like a woman. The silence that followed felt like it lasted for hours, but when she spoke, her voice was quieter than I expected, more controlled. "Robert, are you sure? Maybe you saw something and misunderstood." "Mom, I know what I saw." Robert's voice was stronger now, more certain. "Dad was dressed as a woman. Completely." "Okay." Amelia's voice was steady, falling into the same controlled tone she used in high-pressure business situations. "Okay, let me go find your father, and we'll all sit down and talk about this." "No, Mom, before you do that." Robert's voice, when he spoke again, was thick with emotion. "Mom, for most of my life, actually, you've been at work, you've been in meetings, you've been on business trips, you were building your career. But the thing is, I didn't need financial security as much as I needed a mother." I heard Amelia's breath catch, heard the soft sound that might have been the beginning of a protest or a sob. Robert continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Dad was there. Dad was always there. Every school event, every sick day, every homework crisis, every moment I needed a parent, it was Dad. There was a long silence. When Amelia spoke, her voice was shaking. "Robert, I never realized. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought that was what mattered most. I couldn't listen anymore. I couldn't hide upstairs while they talked about me, about our family, about the fractures I'd been too caught up in my own secret life to fully acknowledge." I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and walked to the top of the stairs. They heard me coming. The conversation stopped abruptly. As I descended, still in the gown, still in full makeup, still transformed, I saw both of them turn to look at me. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked into the living room. I stood there before my family, exposed in every possible way, and for the first time in 20 years, I had absolutely nothing to hide. "I'm sorry," I said, and my voice came out surprisingly steady. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I'm sorry for the secrets, for the lying, for all of it." Amelia was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. In a way, she hadn't. She sat down heavily on the couch. "I was careful," I said. "Very careful. I studied your routine, your schedule. I knew when you'd be late, when Robert would be gone. I made it work around the family, around our life. I never wanted it to impact either of you." Amelia was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. "This is my fault. If I had been here more, if I had been present in our marriage and our family, maybe you wouldn't have needed an escape like this. Maybe you could have talked to me. Maybe we could have worked through this together." "No," I said firmly. "Amelia, this is about me. This is about my own identity, my own relationship with gender and expression and who I am. Your absence gave me opportunity, but it didn't create this need." Amelia wiped her eyes, and when she looked at me, there was something new in her expression. Not just shock anymore, but something softer, something that looked like it might be the beginning of understanding. "You look beautiful," she said quietly. "I don't understand any of this, but I have to admit, you look beautiful." The words broke something in me. "Thank you," I whispered. Robert was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "You've been there for me my entire life. You've been the parent who showed up. And if this is part of who you are, then I guess I need to figure out how to accept that." Amelia reached over and took Robert's hand, and then she reached for mine. I took it, and we sat there, the three of us connected in a way we hadn't been in years, maybe ever. Robert had been caught in the middle of a family that looked functional from the outside, but wasn't really whole. Maybe this moment, as horrible and shocking and difficult as it is, maybe this is our chance to actually fix things. And we start by being honest. That night was just the beginning. We talked for hours, long past midnight, and then we talked again the next day, and the day after that. Amelia made changes. Real changes. She talked to her bosses about adjusting her hours, about delegating more, about creating boundaries between work and home. She started coming home for dinner. She started being present on weekends. She started asking us about our lives, really asking, really listening. And she started seeing a therapist to work through her own relationship with work, with achievement, with the ways she'd used her career to avoid intimacy and vulnerability. Robert and I had longer, harder conversations. He admitted that seeing me in feminine clothing had shaken his entire understanding of gender, of masculinity, of what it meant to be a man. We talked about his own struggles with expectations, with the pressure to be strong and stoic and traditionally masculine. We talked about how maybe my secret had given him unconscious permission to question some of those expectations in his own life, to be more emotionally open, more vulnerable, because he'd seen his father being fully present in caregiving in ways that broke traditional masculine molds. Slowly, carefully, I started letting my family see more of that side of me. Not constantly, not overwhelmingly, but in small moments. I'd wear subtle makeup sometimes, just a little foundation and maybe some mascara. I'd incorporate more androgynous clothing into my everyday wardrobe. And sometimes, on weekends when we were all home together, I'd fully transform, and we'd all just be together as a family, with me dressed femininely, watching movies or having dinner, normalizing it, making it part of our family's reality rather than this forbidden secret. It wasn't easy. There were still awkward silences, moments where we didn't know what to say, days when old habits resurfaced, and slowly our family healed. We became closer than we'd ever been. The secret that had nearly destroyed us became, strangely, the thing that brought us together. We learned that love doesn't mean understanding everything. It doesn't mean being comfortable with everything. It means choosing to stay, to try, to grow together even when things are hard and confusing, and challenge everything you thought you knew. The gown I was wearing that night, the beautiful sequined ombre gown, I still have it. Sometimes I wear it on special occasions. I won't lie and tell you that the revelation was worth it, that I'm glad it happened the way it did. The trauma of that moment, the pain I saw on my son's face, those are things I would never have chosen. But I will tell you that what came after, the healing and growth and deepening of our family bonds, that has been more valuable than I ever could have imagined. If you're living with a secret, if you're hiding part of yourself from the people you love, I can't tell you what to do. Everyone's situation is different, and safety and timing and circumstances all matter. But I can tell you that secrets have a cost, even when they're kept successfully. They create distance. They require energy that could be spent on connection. They carve out hollow spaces in relationships that look whole from the outside but are fragile on the inside. And I can tell you that people are capable of more grace, more understanding, more love than we often give them credit for. The family that I thought would reject me, that I was so terrified to be honest with, they chose me. They chose to stay. They chose to grow. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but genuinely. My name is Lorenzo, and for 20 years, cross-dressing was my sacred secret. Today, it's part of the fullness of who I am, acknowledged and accepted by the people I love most in the world. The journey from secret to acceptance wasn't easy, but it was worth every difficult moment. If you're navigating your own journey with identity, with secrets, with family acceptance, I want you to know that you're not alone. What part of my story resonated with you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, your own experiences with finding acceptance or living authentically. Leave a comment below. And if you found value in my story, please subscribe to this channel. You deserve to live as your whole self, even if the path there is imperfect. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. The end.
The Gender Diary exists to light that path with shared stories. Whether you found connection in this narrative, you're on your own journey of gender exploration, or you're here seeking understanding, your subscription fuels our mission. Every subscriber empowers us to keep illuminating these authentic experiences for our community. Kindly drop a comment below. Your voice adds to the tapestry of experiences that makes this space meaningful. Until our next story unfolds.